South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace. Nancy, first and foremost, I got to tell you, I love your moxie throughout all of this. Some of your tweets were fantastic. I'm walking over there to say no. But you were also cordial, right? Because it got a little bit ugly. Just for the audience, why were you a no on this?
Well, for a lot of reasons. The American people were misled by Congress on what this bill did. Number one, there was actually no cap on the debt ceiling in this bill. There was really no spending cuts either. And there were so many loopholes, it would give you whiplash in this thing. And it doesn't do what the American people were told it was going to do. And spending is going to increase over the long term. And in fact, when you read the Congressional Budget Office report on this over the next 10 years, net, you're going to add about $17.3 trillion overall to the government's debt. And that's just untenuous. We can't afford to keep doing this thing.
You know what bothers me a lot? All the polls, I know, like, for instance, there's a Pew poll, and we saw a spike in the people that wanted the president and Congress to reduce the budget deficit. 71% of Republicans, 44% of Democrats, up from 29%, by the way, of course, independents.
Yeah.
To me, this was a golden opportunity. For your colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle that voted for it, what was their rationale?
It's hard to say. I mean, for a lot of folks, some people didn't actually read the bill. I read it twice, and it made me angrier the second time that I read it, because we're basically setting into law, when Biden signs this thing into law, we're setting our future spending baseline at record high levels set during COVID-19, when it was an emergency and we were told we would never spend this much money again. We don't have the tax revenues to cover the spending, thus the deficits. And the American people were lied to, and I think members of Congress were misled too.
But, in there's so many, to your point, there are loopholes, everything has a counter, right? The White House can pull certain levers and ignore everything that the Republicans fought for, that they promised in the midterm elections. They can do it with the snap of a finger, and it's just heartbreaking. But here's the thing. We know that elected officials, it's really difficult to be elected, go to Washington, D.C., and not bring any money home, right? Some say you don't necessarily have to bring a bridge to nowhere, but you got to bring something home. I went to your website. I saw where you were proud of the $4.6 million you returned to constituents from state and federal government agencies. But here's my thing, Representative Mace. Ultimately, isn't it on the voters? I mean, if we keep voting in people who are going to spin us into oblivion and destroy the future of our children, isn't that ultimately on voters? Why can't we get it?
It is. We can't change Washington unless we change the people that we send to Washington. And to your point earlier, Charles, the vast majority of Americans, even up to 45% of Democrats, the majority of independents and Republicans, wanted to see spending cuts in exchange for a debt ceiling hike. That's not what they got. That's not what the bill of goods that they were sold. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we need people who are going to stand firm and realize there's some tough decisions we're going to have to make in 10 years from now. If this thing goes the way they say it is, that a lot of entitlement programs are going to be going insolvent, and you just can't afford, if you're worried about Social Security today, guess what happens 10 years from now with the kind of spending that we're putting into law with this bill?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking $1 trillion to pay interest. It's just not free. Yeah. It's just not free. I do, again, want to applaud you for the stance that you took, and I appreciate you coming on the show to talk to us.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you very much.